We are at the top of the hour for our last presentation with Thomas Hatch, our CTO and technical founder. And I'm Janae Andrus, our field marketing manager at SaltStack. So we are really excited about BlackHat and wrapping up these presentations. I hope you've enjoyed them. Hope you enjoy interacting with our staff in the booth. And of course, the swag, the salty swag. I have some on right now.
There's much salty swag.
There's always good salty swag. So if any of you caught the last presentation, the banana problem, I have a couple of issues with the banana problem.
Janae made it very clear that I had offended some of her sensibilities in that last episode. And so we need to bring about some resolution.
Yes.
In the form of ragging on me.
Pretty much. So Tom insinuated that, and by insinuated I mean directly stated, that a banana is many people's favorite. Well, you said like most people's
No, I
favorite.
said many. No, we went back. We went back. I have a firm defense on this one. I said it's many
Okay.
people's favorite tropical fruit.
So he said it's many people's favorite tropical fruit.
Janae thought I said most.
You know what? It's wrong either way.
I only need like a room full of people who say bananas are their favorite fruit, and I can win this argument. That's all
Good
I
luck
need.
finding it. You would have
That's
to
all I need.
cherry pick those people to bring in another fruit that is better than a banana.
Just a room full. My favorite tropical fruit is pineapple.
You don't even admit your own assertion. When clearly the best tropical fruit is the mango.
Oh, that's right. Mangoes are good. They're more fibrous.
This is true. Is fiber your only barometer for good fruit?
No, it's just the only bad thing. I shouldn't even say bad. It's the only attack I could possibly level on a mango. Because they're amazing.
They're so good.
It's really, I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd have to levy an attack on a mango.
And yet it happened. So,
But this next one I think I'm actually going to get in trouble for.
okay. So when Tom was discussing the banana problem, for those of you who missed it, very brief summary of the banana problem, right, is that when the bananas are they're similar, right, in genetic makeup, and so they're more susceptible to a kind of genetic attack or any kind of disease that could harm them.
Disease.
Disease, for example. So, and of course you can make the cybersecurity analogy yourself or go back and watch Tom Hatch's banana problem talk. But when he was making this point, he discussed how the Black Plague was so successful for these reasons. The word choice of successful concerns me in my soul.
So when you, this is harder to defend.
Yeah.
But if we were to assess on a
Welcome to BlackHat, to the SaltStack booth. We're harassing Tom, our CTO.
If you look at the Black Plague from the Black Plague perspective, it was successful at, killing many people. Actually, the reality is that is a bad choice of words, not only from a humanistic perspective, definitely a bad choice of words for humanistic.
The optics aren't great.
I will apologize for calling the Black Death successful. But I'm actually going to dig a deeper hole. Because the Black Death wasn't very successful. Because it came and it went, and a really successful illness only kills a very small percentage. Because then that allows it to spread and mutate. I'm just going to stop because we're in the middle of something right now.
This is an example of why we love Tom Hatch. He always has great thoughts and ideas, which is why we've had a ton of fun doing our segments today for 15 to 30 minutes. At the top of the hour, yesterday and today. It's been fantastic hearing his thoughts, mostly original. 90% of this has been stuff he's never really talked about before. It's been a lot of fun picking his brain and hearing his thoughts. So today is our last one.
Yeah.
And we are going to talk about all the holes that are still out there, vulnerabilities, and why they're still in your infrastructure.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks, guys, and enjoy BlackHat. Talk to our staff in the booth and enjoy Thomas Hatch.
Thank you, Janae. It's not every day that I have employees who get to rag on me quite that severely. It's almost every day, though. That is one of the problems of starting and running a company. There's always somebody who's not happy with something that you've done. They're usually not as pleasant about it as Janae. Okay. Holes that are in your infrastructure. Recently, there was a government report from the US government, and I suddenly cannot remember the agency, that came out with a report of the 10 most exploited vulnerabilities in the wild today. And on that list, quite a few of those vulnerabilities were pretty old. Many of them dated back 5+ years. And normally we'd like to think that when something's been in the wild for a little while, maybe we could get that thing resolved. But many, many years. And as I went down this list, it didn't take long before I was able to say, yeah, okay, I can see that. I understand why that is still an issue. So let's dissect it for a minute, shall we? There was one reoccurring theme. And I'll start with this one. Or I should say there were a few reoccurring themes. And I'll start with this one. It was web platforms, particularly things like PHP platforms, Apache struts vulnerability was on there, where you've got the code that you would build a server-side website from. So, why is this an obvious place for vulnerabilities? It might not be what you're thinking. You might be thinking, well, those are written in PHP, and PHP is Swiss cheese. You might be, that's the second time I've used Swiss cheese today. See, this is the problem with doing these things live and off the cuff. I can only come up with so much witty garbage at a time. And anyway, sorry, now I'm just bored. So, now I'm trying to engage with an audience that I have no feedback from. Very challenging thing to do. Anyway, so it's like, and you're thinking PHP is like Swiss cheese, right? But that's not why, because we've got a Java web platform in there too. And so why? Really what this boils down to is how the software is deployed on the website. When you install OpenSSL, it's installed using a Linux server's package manager. It's tracked. All of its cryptographic hashes are stored in the package management database. The package management database can be quickly and easily queried to see if it's there. You can verify that it's there quickly and easily with the scanners. You know exactly what it is. It's widely published, and you can verify that all of its binaries are exactly what they should be. Really easy to do. You can complete that process without a whole lot of code. Not a hard thing to scan for, okay? When you deploy a PHP application, this is not the case. You go out to that application's website and you download typically a zip file or a tarball. You then take that tarball and you untar it into anywhere you want on a server. Once that's untarred, you then set up a web server as a front end and point it back to that application. And then when you scan for that application, it doesn't have initialization binaries that you can check for a version. It doesn't put its version information in a specific location. You don't put it in a specific location. It might be under /srv. Somebody might have thought it was right to put it under varlib. You have no idea where it is. The only way for a scanning tool to find it is to have already created an independent signature of every possible instance of this code that's out there, and then scan the entire hard drive, which does take some time. The signature for the software that's out there has to match the scanning system. And so instead of being able to query a package database or query an install database and just say, I know exactly what's on the system, you've got to scan the whole hard drive, which takes considerably more time, has an impact on the system, so you don't want to do those scans anywhere near as often. And is still not very reliable, because the person who just untarred that application may have modified it after the fact in such a way that makes it harder to track and find a signature for. And then how do you update that application? Well, going back to OpenSSL, you update that by saying apt-get upgrade or yum upgrade. Goes out to a package manager, and you've been able to rely on your Linux distribution to dutifully and wonderfully do you the service of giving you a patched version of OpenSSL, and you're done. How do you update this random web app that you've unloaded from tar, zip, or jar files? You have to know exactly where you've decided that it's going to be unloaded. You've got to make sure that you know all of your everything that's linked to it. You've got to shut down the controlling web server. You've got to remove all of the files that are pertinent to it. You've got to update those files yourself, because normally a package manager on an operating system, it's made to be able to do this in a very optimized and streamlined way. You're doing an RMRF on a directory. Right? You're just deleting a whole directory, unloading new code into that directory. And then once you're done with all of those, you've got to migrate databases. That upgrade process is significantly more involved, more documented, and more error-prone. Now, there's plenty of automation software that can do those updates. I happen to have written a widely used one of those. But that's more difficult. It's more difficult to find, it's more difficult to fix. And so we end up with these staying out there for much longer periods of time because of that difficulty cross-section that exists. The more difficult something is to manage, the less likely it is that we're going to deal with managing. So that's what we end up with, is tarballs full of jar files and PHP code lying around on these servers. And so since they're so hard to update, again, it just takes more time. So it becomes very important to be able to scan in depth and find these specific pieces of software. The next class of issues was frankly a lot of Microsoft issues, a lot of Windows bugs, Windows security issues. When I first looked at this list and I was talking to someone else, they said, boy, Tom, you'll love this list. It's all Windows stuff. I'm a Linux guy. I run Arch Linux on my laptop. There's an old joke that is, how do you know if somebody runs Arch Linux? They'll tell you. And I get to say it's an old joke because I'm pretty sure I'm the one who started saying it about 15 years ago at conferences. But I love Linux. I love the simplicity and elegance of the operating system, how everything is deployed. And I just bought a new laptop a couple days ago and spent 2 days making sure that my Linux install was perfect. And so everybody at the office knows this because I rant and rave and tell them how much I love Linux. And so they give me a list of Windows bugs and say, you'll love this, Tom. And I kind of chuckle and say, I can't use it that way. That's not what this is about. It's actually an expression of the banana problem from the last episode. Windows is so big and so ubiquitous that of course security problems in Microsoft products are going to persist. Of course they're going to be hard to deal with. But let's dissect why they're hard to deal with on a functional basis. Not just because they do an excellent job of highlighting the banana problem. Actually, I should also say that the PHP applications highlight the banana problem as well. They're very ubiquitously deployed, and they're really hard to keep track of, which is kind of like just saying that we've got contraband bananas in the jungle. If only that's what we really do in the jungle is contraband. Now, Janae's going to get after me for that one too. So, what we end up with is the ubiquity of Microsoft software. Because it's so out there, of course it's going to be more exploitable. But that's just the first piece. So I will talk about how Linux is great just a little bit. Back in the 90s, in Linux, we came up with this package management concept, which is really great. That says all of the software is going to be in these nice, discrete little packages. That allows us to have distributed development. It allows us to coalesce lots of people's effort. And it allows us to build how they depend on each other in an elegant way. And the art of a Linux distribution began back again in the early 90s with Peter. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, the guy who made Slackware, fantastic guy. And then Debian and Red Hat and these Linux distributions that persist today, delivering fantastic software to all of us. But that concept of breaking everything up into little pieces also made the security and update of that platform really easy. It was an elegant, simple, maintainable concept. Microsoft's operating system is built in a significantly monolithic way. Well, why wouldn't they make it like a Linux distribution? If, Tom, as you're saying, the optimal way to do this is lots of small discrete pieces, why wouldn't you do it that way? Well, what this boils down to is that if you are a large, contiguous corporate entity, like, say, Microsoft, it's a lot easier to build monolithic software. Because when you build monolithic software, you're just able to say, hey guys, you're going to work on Office. You're going to work on Windows. And you can have giant teams of engineers focused on it. In the open source world, we're lucky to get more than a handful of engineers working on any single project. So the projects just have to be small out of necessity. Now, Microsoft did recently release a report late last year that was talking about how they have discovered that monolithic software is exponentially more difficult to maintain than smaller compartmentalized software, and that the costs associated are incredibly burdensome. But it took them 30 years to get there. And 30 years of software is a lot of software. We make early development, design, and engineering decisions so very often not based on our anticipated result, but on how we're going to get a result in the next so many months. And then we stick with those designs. Whereas a really good engineer is able to balance long-term results with short-term results so that you can get something that can persist in an elegant way. And every now and then, we get lucky. And the economic circumstances in which we function facilitate those scenarios. And so I am going to say, I think that the design of Linux is, from an engineering perspective, better. But I certainly cannot blame Microsoft for their design, because it does make sense in the scope in which it was engineered and delivered. But it has the side effect of it being much more difficult to patch Windows systems than Linux systems. And that's because of the complexity of patching monolithic software distributions. This also adds one more dimension, and that is the fact that who uses these Windows systems? They're not trained system administrators and IT professionals. They're your grandma. And so we've got untrained people who are using these systems, which means they don't care if they don't do a security update. Many of them are afraid to do the security updates and the feature updates because something might change on them, and they don't want anything to change. I've actually, an example I really like, a movie came out recently called Knives Out. If you haven't seen Knives Out, you're missing out. One of the best movies of last year. Absolutely brilliant. I'm watching it for the, I don't know, 7th time with my daughter. And I notice that, I just forgot the guy's name. What's the guy's name? The guy that gets killed? You know, who's played by the same guy? Janae's not helping me out at all. She can't remember either. I'm experiencing terrible press favor now. Okay. Harlan Thrombey was his name. He turns his laptop around to show to his nurse. And this movie came out last year. Harlan Thrombey's laptop is running Windows XP because they nailed that character. And I'm watching it with my daughter, and it's the 7th time or something. I'm able to lean over and say, Hannah, that's a component of character development that he's using a version of Windows that's so old you don't even recognize it. But it's emphasizing where this problem comes from. The ability to update and patch the security system is relative, I'm trying to think of a really elegant way of saying this. The feasibility of patching and updating the security of a system is directly relative to the experience of its primary user to engage in said activity. Meaning, if the primary user of 85% of your products doesn't know anything about how they work, they're not going to get updated. And so this results in a lot of vulnerable Windows systems being out there in the wild. All right. These are just a couple of the reasons. But let me kind of summarize them. Software that is deployed that's hard to keep track of and hard to update gets found less and updated less. Software that's deployed to users who are not experts on the software, meaning that that software is not going to be updated as frequently, and the ubiquity of software means that the surface area that it covers has more cracks, has a higher probability of having long-term problems. And so together we end up with the expression more of a perfect storm and less of a most embarrassing vulnerability. I want to thank everybody for coming to BlackHat. This is the last you'll see of me for BlackHat, but I hope that you've all had an excellent time at this conference. I hope that you've all enjoyed the virtual conference. And as we've tried very hard to engage as best we can across the BlackHat virtual conference, I've been in presentations all week and it's been fantastic. I've been able to do a lot more and talk a lot more than I have in the vast majority of conferences that I've ever been to. And so I do see certain benefits with these virtual conferences. But that does not at all negate the fact that I certainly hope that soon in the future, again, we'll be able to shake hands yet again in confidence and talk to each other unfettered so that we can all get on with having fantastic lives on the other side of this terrible pandemic. And I hope, definitely hope, as we all do, that those who are suffering from it will be able to recover. Now, enjoy the rest of the show. As always, please engage with the folks that we've got in the booth. They know their business. Until next time, thanks.